10 minutes after my twin sister said, "I do," she put both hands on my back and shoved me into 12 feet of water. I couldn't swim. She knew that. She smiled while she did it. Everyone thought it was an accident. 200 wedding guests laughed it off as a bridesmaid mishap. Nobody knew Vivian had been planning this exact moment since we were 11 years old, since the first time she tried to drown me, and got away with it. I was 3 seconds from blacking out when a stranger in a wedding tuxedo hit the water beside me. It was Julian, the groom. My sister's husband of 10 minutes, and the only person at that wedding who was about to hear, through a live microphone, exactly what kind of monster he'd just married. By the end of that night, the marriage was over, the live stream had 11,000 witnesses, and my sister's entire empire was 48 hours from collapse. But the real story, the one that started 10 years earlier in our childhood backyard, was only just beginning to surface. I have to go back further than the pool for this to make sense. My name is Elena. Vivian is my twin, same face, same birthday, nothing else the same. She built a life out of being watched, 3 million followers, brand deals, a wedding live stream that had 11,000 people tuned in the moment she married Julian Cole at the Crestview estate. I built a life out of staying out of frame. That should have kept me safe. It didn't. I almost didn't go to the wedding. My best friend Aria, private investigator, the only person who ever believed me about what happened when we were kids, told me not to. "You know how she gets around cameras," Aria said the week before, sitting across from me at my kitchen table with a folder she wouldn't let me see yet. "She needs a villain in every scene so she can play the hero. Don't give her one. She's my sister, Aria. I'm not skipping her wedding. She pushed you in a pool when we were 15 because you got more attention at a party. I was 12 feet from the shallow end and Dad pulled me out in 4 seconds. This is different." Aria didn't argue. She just slid the folder an inch closer to me and said, "When you're ready to actually look at this, call me." I didn't open it. I wish I had. The wedding was beautiful in the aggressive, curated way everything Vivian touched was beautiful. 200 guests. A string quartet. Her fiancé Julian, kind eyes, quiet voice, a man who clearly hadn't yet learned what my sister was capable of, and his 8-year-old daughter, Nadia, from his first marriage, sitting in the front row in a tiny white dress, watching her father get married with the careful, guarded expression of a kid who'd learned not to trust new adults too fast. I liked Nadia immediately. She reminded me of myself at that age, watching everything, saying little. The trouble started during the photo session, 20 minutes after the vows. "Elena, come here, I need you by the pool for the sister shot," Vivian called, waving me over in her gown, champagne glass somehow already in hand. "The light's perfect right at the edge." "I don't love being that close to the edge, Vivi." "Oh my God, it's a photo, not a swim test." She laughed and around us 3 cameras turned toward the sound of her laugh, because that's what cameras did around Vivian. "Come on, don't ruin my wedding pictures because of a phobia from when we were kids." I went. Because it was easier to go than to explain, again, to a crowd of strangers, why deep water made my chest lock up. Because some part of me, even after everything, still wanted to believe my sister on her wedding day. She put her arm around me for the photo. Smiled at the camera. And then, in the half-second between one flash and the next, when nobody's eyes were on her hands, she pushed. I didn't fall. I was thrown. The water hit like a wall. My dress, the champagne silk she'd picked out for me because it wouldn't upstage the bride, filled instantly and pulled me down like something alive. I clawed at the surface and found nothing. I opened my mouth to scream and swallowed water instead. Above me, distorted through 12 feet of blue, I could see shapes moving, guests turning, someone pointing, and my sister, my twin, my own blood, standing at the edge with her hand pressed to her mouth in an expression that even now, drowning, some analytical part of my brain recognized as performed. She wasn't panicking. She was posing. Then the water broke apart around me. A shape in black tuxedo cut down fast and hard, an arm locked around my ribs, and I was hauled up through 12 feet of chlorine and silence into noise and light and screaming. I hit the pool deck coughing up water, and the first clear thing I saw was Julian's face above mine, soaked to the bone in his wedding suit, his hands shaking as he checked if I was breathing. "Elena, Elena, look at me, are you okay?" Behind him, I heard my sister's laugh ring out over the stunned crowd, bright and camera ready, already spinning the story before I'd even caught my breath. "Oh my God, everyone, it's fine, it was just a joke. Elena's such a good sport." A joke. She'd nearly drowned me and called it a joke, with 200 guests and 11,000 live stream viewers watching her smile while she said it. And that's when I saw Julian's expression change, not to anger yet but to something colder. Recognition. Because 5 minutes before he'd dove in after me, his lapel mic had picked up something my sister said backstage to his 8-year-old daughter, and he was about to repeat every word of it in front of everyone she'd ever performed for. Nobody at that wedding knew it yet. But Vivian's perfect, curated life was about to start drowning too, and this time, there'd be no one there to pull her out. Julian pulled me up onto my feet, and my legs barely held. Water streamed off the champagne silk and pooled on the stone deck around me like the pool was still trying to claim something. "Julian, baby, come on," Vivian's voice had already shifted gears, already smoothing itself back into wedding day sweetness. "Let's get you a dry jacket and get back to the reception. The photographer's waiting for the first dance." "Don't." Julian didn't look at her. He was still looking at me, checking my eyes, my breathing. "Don't touch me right now, Vivian." The quartet had stopped playing. 200 guests stood frozen in that specific silence that happens right before something breaks open in public. "What is wrong with you?" Vivian's smile cracked at the corners. "It was a joke. Elena knows I would never actually." "I heard you." His voice came out flat. "Final. 5 minutes ago. Backstage. With Nadia." I watched the color drain out of my sister's face in real time. "I don't know what you're talking about." But her voice had lost its polish. It came out smaller. Scared, even, in a way I'd genuinely never heard from her before. Julian reached into his soaked jacket and pulled out a small black lapel mic, the little red light still blinking, still live. "You forgot I was wired for the ceremony audio." Every word came through my earpiece. "Julian, you told my 8-year-old daughter that if she ever told me about your old business from before we met, you'd make sure she went in the water too." His hand was shaking now, not from cold. "You threatened a child. 5 minutes before you pushed my future sister-in-law into a pool she's terrified of." Somewhere in the crowd, a phone camera turned toward them. Then another. Then a dozen, all angling for the shot, all feeding a live stream that 11,000 strangers were watching unfold in real time from their kitchens and cars and offices. "That's not, I would never say that to Nadia, she's misremembering, she's 8. She's not the one wearing a live mic, Vivian." My sister's mouth opened. Nothing came out this time. I found Nadia in the crowd, half hidden behind her grandmother's chair, small hands twisted in the fabric of her white dress, watching all of it with the flat, unsurprised look of a kid who already knew exactly what kind of person her new stepmother was, and had been too scared to say so until someone else caught it first. Julian pulled the wedding band off his finger. He didn't throw it. He set it down on the pool deck, gently, the way you set down something already dead. "The marriage is over. You cannot do this to me. Not here. Not on camera." "You should have thought about the cameras," Julian said, "before you decided the deep end was funny." He walked to Nadia, crouched down, and she went into his arms without hesitation, without a single backward glance at Vivian. He stood, took my hand next, I was still shaking, still dripping, my mascara long gone, and walked the two of us straight past the altar, past the untouched 5-tier cake, past 200 guests who parted like they didn't dare get in his way. Behind us, I heard Vivian's voice crack into something raw and desperate, no longer performing for anyone. "Julian, Julian, everyone is watching. I know, he said, without turning around. That's the only reason you'll finally stop lying. We walked out of the Crestview Estate Gardens into the parking lot, my dress leaving a wet trail across the gravel, Nadia's small hand tight in her father's, and somewhere behind us I could still hear my sister's voice, no longer bright, no longer camera-ready, just a woman standing alone at her own altar, watching her carefully built world start to come apart on a live stream she couldn't turn off. Julian got us into his car, put the heat on full, and just sat there for a second gripping the steering wheel like it was the only solid thing left in the world. Elena. His voice was quiet now. Careful. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Okay. Has she done this before? Something like this to you? I almost said no. 10 years of practice saying no, of protecting the family narrative, of being the twin who didn't cause problems, rose up automatically in my throat. But Nadia was in the back seat, wrapped in Julian's suit jacket, watching me with those same careful eyes, and I thought about what it had cost her to sit through a wedding knowing what she knew and staying quiet anyway. When we were 11, I said slowly, I nearly drowned in our backyard pool. Everyone said I slipped on the diving board and hit my head going in. I looked down at my soaked hands. I never actually remembered slipping. Julian went very still. You think she did that too? I didn't let myself think it. Not until tonight. My phone buzzed in the small waterproof pocket of my ruined dress, somehow it had survived. A text from Arya, the friend who'd tried to warn me a week ago, the one with the folder I never opened. Turn on Channel 9 local news. Now. And call me the second you can talk. I turned on the car radio instead, hands shaking too hard to manage my phone screen, and the local news anchor's voice filled the car mid-sentence. Footage from the Crestview Estate wedding has gone viral in the last 20 minutes, with viewers questioning what exactly influencer Vivian Marsh said to her new stepdaughter before the ceremony collapsed live on camera. But that's not the only story breaking tonight involving the Marsh family. Sources close to a decade-old case are now saying. The radio cut to static as we drove into a dead zone, and Julian and I looked at each other in the sudden silence, both of us thinking the same thing. A decade-old case. 10 years, almost to the season, since an 11-year-old girl slipped into a backyard pool, and nobody asked the right questions. Someone else already knew what happened to me as a child. And they were about to make sure the entire world found out too, before I even had the chance to remember it myself. Arya was waiting on my porch when Julian dropped me and Nadia off at my apartment an hour later, still in her work clothes, a laptop bag over one shoulder, and that same folder from a week ago tucked under her arm, thicker now, edges worn like she'd been carrying it everywhere since I refused to look at it. I tried to warn you, she said, not unkindly, as I led us all inside. I know. I mean, I really tried, Elena. I've had this since March. Julian got Nadia settled on my couch with a blanket and the TV remote, low volume, cartoons, something to keep an 8-year-old from having to sit through what came next. Then he came back to the kitchen table where Arya had already spread the folder open like she'd been waiting years for someone to finally ask. Start from the beginning, I said. All of it. Don't soften it. Arya pulled out the first document, a property deed, dated 11 years ago, our parents' names on it. Your parents will originally split the Hargrove Lane house, and the trust fund 50-50 between you and Vivian. Standard stuff. She slid out a second document, a revised will, dated 1 year later, 6 months after I slipped into the pool. This is the amended version. After your accident, your parents restructured the trust so that if anything happened to either twin before age 25, the surviving twin inherited everything. Full stop. No conditions. The kitchen went very quiet. You're telling me, I said slowly, that if I had died in that pool when I was 11, Vivian would have gotten everything. I'm telling you your parents made that change because you almost died, to protect whichever one of you survived a tragedy. It was meant to be love, Elena. Grief insurance. Arya's jaw tightened. But somebody read that will a lot more carefully than your parents intended. She pulled a third item, a printout of an old email, recovered, she explained, through a records request she'd filed months ago on a hunch. It was between Vivian, age 16 at the time, and a family friend, complaining bitterly about having to share everything with Elena forever and asking, almost casually, what would happen to the trust if something happened to one of us. I stared at my own handwriting-adjacent 16-year-old sister's words until they blurred. She was planning this since we were teenagers. I don't think it was one plan, Arya said carefully. I think it was a pattern. The pool when you were 11. A car that mysteriously had brake trouble when you were 17, that she convinced you not to report because it'll scare mom. A hiking trip at 20 where she suggested the trail closest to the ravine edge for your photo. She tapped each item on the table like evidence in a case she'd been building silently for months. Individually, they all look like accidents or jokes or bad luck. Together, they're a decade-long pattern with one consistent variable. Me, I whispered. I'm the variable. Julian, who'd been silent through all of it, finally spoke. Tonight wasn't random either, was it? It was the wedding. Arya nodded slowly. Once she married you, the trust structure changes again. Elena's original attorney flagged it to me last month. Married beneficiaries have different inheritance triggers under your parents' original trust language. If something had happened to Elena tonight, at the wedding, with 200 witnesses, and a very convenient accident narrative already halfway built, it would have looked like the tragic capstone to a childhood trauma story. Twin sister overcomes fear of water to attend the wedding, tragically drowns anyway. Vivian gets the sympathy, the story, the followers, and the trust. I had to sit down. She wasn't just trying to embarrass me at her wedding, I said. She was trying to finish something she started when we were 11 years old. Nobody argued with me. Nobody could. Julian's phone buzzed on the table, then buzzed again, then didn't stop. He turned the screen toward us, a news alert, then another, then a flood of them, all variations of the same headline forming in real time across different outlets. Influencer Vivian Marsh's wedding collapses on live stream amid child endangerment allegations. It's already everywhere, he said quietly. Someone clipped the mic audio. It's been shared 40,000 times in the last hour. That wasn't us, Arya said, glancing at me. I know. It doesn't matter whose it was. I looked at the folder, at 11 years of quiet, patient malice laid out in property deeds, and old emails, and a pattern nobody had wanted to see, because seeing it meant admitting my own twin sister had been trying to kill me, slowly, for over a decade, one plausible accident at a time. It matters what we do with the next 24 hours, before she has time to spin a new story. What are you thinking? Julian asked. I looked at the folder, then at him, then toward the living room where his daughter sat wrapped in a blanket, safe for the first time in longer than any of us had realized. Vivian built her entire life on being watched, I said. Every version of the truth she's ever gotten away with, she got away with because she controlled the camera. Backyard pool, brake lines, hiking trail, nobody was filming those. Tonight, for the first time in 10 years, she was the one being filmed, and she still didn't see it coming. Arya leaned forward, already understanding where I was going. You want to give her one more camera she doesn't control. I want everyone who's ever donated to her charity live streams, every sponsor who's ever paid her for a partnership, every follower who's ever defended her online. I want them to see exactly what happened in that backyard 11 years ago. Not as a rumor. As proof. That's not going to be enough to satisfy you, Julian said quietly. It wasn't a question. He was right. And even as I said it out loud, some cold, clear part of me, the part that had spent 11 years being told I imagined things, misremembered things, was too sensitive, too dramatic, too much like Vivian's shadow to be believed on my own, knew exactly what came next. Because Arya's folder had one more document in it. One she hadn't shown us yet. She slid it across the table last, face down, and looked at me before she turned it over. There's a witness, she said. Someone who was at the house the day you went in that pool. Someone who's been too scared to talk for 11 years, until she found out tonight what almost happened to you at that wedding. She turned the page over. It was a name I hadn't heard in over a decade. The housekeeper who'd worked for our family the year I slipped. The one who'd quietly resigned 3 weeks after my accident and never spoken to any of us again. She called my office 40 minutes ago, Arya said. She wants to talk. Tonight. And Elena, she says she has something. Something she's been holding onto since the day it happened, too afraid to bring forward until she saw your sister's face on the news tonight, and finally understood she wasn't the only one Vivian had threatened into silence. The housekeeper's name was Marta Reyes, and she agreed to meet us that same night at Arya's office, not our house, not anywhere connected to my family. She made that clear on the phone, her voice tight with 11 years of fear she'd apparently never fully set down. Julian stayed home with Nadia. This part, we agreed, wasn't for a child to sit through twice in one night. Marta was in her 60s now, gray at the temples, hands folded tightly in her lap when Arya and I sat down across from her. She looked at me for a long moment before she spoke. "You have your mother's eyes," she said. "I always thought so. Vivian has your father's." "Marta, thank you for calling. I should have called 11 years ago." Her hands twisted together. "I was in the pool house that afternoon. I saw Vivian follow you out to the diving board. I saw her push you. I saw you go under and not come back up, and I saw her stand there, not screaming, not running for help, just watching, for almost 30 seconds before your father heard something and came outside." The room felt very small. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because when your father pulled you out and you were coughing up water on the pool deck, half-conscious, Vivian was already crying, already saying you'd slipped, already being comforted by everyone in the yard. And when I found her alone in the kitchen 20 minutes later, and told her I'd seen what really happened," Marta's voice cracked for the first time. She was 16 years old, and she looked at me with the calmest face I have ever seen on a person, and she said if I ever told anyone, she'd tell your parents I'd been stealing from the household account. She had already planted fake transactions. She showed me printouts. She'd planned the lie before she'd even finished planning the push. I felt something in my chest go very cold and very still. "I resigned 3 weeks later," Marta continued. "I told myself I was protecting my own family, that no one would believe a housekeeper over a grieving 16-year-old. I've carried this for 11 years. Tonight, when I saw the footage from the wedding, saw her push you into that pool with the exact same calm face, I couldn't carry it anymore." She reached into her purse and pulled out an old cassette-style dictaphone, the kind nobody used anymore. "I recorded her. That day in the kitchen. I don't know why, instinct, maybe, or 20 years of working for families and learning to protect myself. I've kept it in a safety deposit box ever since, too afraid to use it, too afraid to destroy it." Arya and I looked at each other. 11 years of silence, sitting in a cassette in a bank vault, waiting for someone to be brave enough to need it. "Will you let us use it?" I asked. "Not to hurt you. To finally end this." Marta didn't hesitate. "That's exactly why I brought it. We didn't leak it to the press. We didn't need to by morning, the wedding footage had already done most of that work, 48 hours of it burning through every corner of the internet, sponsors pulling out one by one, comment sections filling with people who'd apparently sensed something off about Vivian for years and had just been waiting for permission to say so. Instead, Julian's attorney filed the child endangerment complaint on Nadia's behalf that same week. I filed my own report, attempted assault, this time with a live stream, 200 witnesses, and a live mic recording as evidence nobody could spin away. And Arya, with Marta's blessing, handed the 11-year-old cassette recording to the detective assigned to my case, along with the amended trust documents that gave my sister a decade-old financial motive nobody had ever thought to look for. Vivian's arrest happened quietly, 3 weeks later, at the townhouse she'd been hiding in since the sponsors dropped her and the followers turned. No cameras this time. No audience. Just 2 detectives and a pair of handcuffs and my sister's face, for the first time in her life, with absolutely no performance left in it. I didn't go to the arrest. I went to the courthouse, months later, when the case was finally heard, attempted murder charges from the wedding incident, with the 11-year-old pool incident and the threat to Nadia entered as pattern evidence. Marta testified. The dictaphone recording played in a courtroom instead of staying buried in a bank vault. Julian sat beside me the whole time, and Nadia, older now by nearly a year, sat between her father and Arya, finally safe enough to stop watching every adult in the room like they might turn on her too. Vivian got 22 years. She looked at me exactly once, right before they led her out, not with hatred, which somehow would have been easier, but with something closer to confusion, like she genuinely couldn't understand how the girl she'd spent a lifetime pushing under had learned to swim. I go back to the Crestview estate sometimes now. Not the pool, I'm not there yet, and I've stopped pretending I need to force that particular kind of healing on a schedule. But I walk the gardens where Julian once carried his daughter, and my hand out of a wedding that should have ended in a tragedy, and instead ended a decade of lies. Julian and I didn't rush into anything. Grief and gratitude aren't the same as love, and we both knew that. But a year later, when he asked if I'd come to Nadia's 9th birthday party, not as her father's rescue, just as Elena, just as someone who'd earned a permanent place in both their lives, I said yes without hesitating.